Okay, so not only did the new footage finally confirm that Max is alive and mentally imprisoned inside Vecna's consciousness, but it also revealed something huge. We get our first look at the thing Henry Creel fears the most. Max basically walks us through what happened to her right after the end of Season 4, when Vecna shattered her body and 11 jump-started her heart. She explains that she sprinted through the maze of his memories until the music cut through everything and showed her an escape route, only for her to get grabbed at the very last moment. Vecna corners her and chases her back through the darkest corners of his own past until Max stumbles into this cavern memory, and Henry just freezes. You can literally see the fear shaking him. He's trembling, horrified, and instead of pursuing her, he flees. So, why doesn't he follow her into that cavern? Why can't he just step into this memory and finally wipe her out? What happened inside his own mind that's traumatic enough to stop him cold? Well, the reason most people don't recognize what this cave is referencing is simple. Hardly anyone was able to hop on a plane, fly halfway across the planet, and watch the first Shadow stage play in person. And that play is where they reveal the traumatic event Henry lived through in that very cavern, his first encounter with the Mind Flayer. Considering how important it is, it still blows my mind that Netflix didn't release the whole performance. So here's what we're going to do. I'm breaking down everything tied to this cave, exactly what happened there and why Henry refuses to step into it, all in this video. And after this, you have to check out my full breakdown of the first Shadow, because the Duffers literally said in a recent interview that the play becomes even more essential to the rest of this season. You're definitely going to want that context. As always, thank you for the support and for hanging with me in the comments while we walk through Season 5 together. I've got a few more videos in the works too, so hit subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Anyway, in Season 5, we see Max stuck inside Henry's mind, as she moves from the Hawkins Lab massacre to a 1959 Hawkins High picture day. It hits her that she's walking through Henry Creel's life. And that's where we see a young Joyce Maldonado, her maiden name before she married Lonnie. Max watches Joyce hand out flyers for the school's production of Oklahoma. But thanks to the first Shadow, we know that play is a total decoy. Joyce actually decides to stage a completely different show, without telling the principal, because she's desperately trying to get into a college arts program. She manages to convince a scout to come watch this secret play, hoping it'll earn her a scholarship so she can leave Hawkins behind. The real play she's directing is The Dark of the Moon, a story about a witch boy who falls in love with a beautiful woman and gives up his magical powers in a pact with the devil to be with her, only for that choice to doom both of them. It's about fear's destructive nature and asks the question, can love overpower fear? Which is insane, because that question is basically the spine of the entire Stranger Things universe. Time after time, we see love overpower terror. Mike literally saves 11 from Vecna by telling her he loves her. Music pulls people out of Vecna's curse. In this story, love is the only counterweight to fear. On the play's flyer, we see James Hopper Jr., Karen Childress, Mike's mom, Patty Newby, who is Bob's sister and essentially the main character of the first Shadow, standing right next to Henry. It's wild seeing Patty Newby referenced directly in the show. The flyer also lists Alan Munson, Eddie's dad, and Ted Wheeler, Mike's father, plus Henry Creel himself, cast as the witch boy with supernatural abilities who bargains with the devil, basically foreshadowing his connection with the Mind Flayer. And keep in mind, at this point in Henry's memory, the Mind Flayer is already inside him. In the first Shadow, we learn that the Creels lived in Nevada before they ever moved to Hawkins, right next to a military base where Dr. Brenner was working. Brenner was investigating Project Rainbow, a military experiment using electromagnetic energy to try to make a battleship invisible. And the experiment worked, just not the way they expected. The ship didn't turn invisible. It was accidentally transported to Dimension X. A Demogorgon found the crew and slaughtered almost everyone, except the captain, who happened to be Dr. Brenner's father. When the ship returned, Brenner's father came back changed. While he was trapped in the Upside Down, Mind Flayer particles infected him. Back on Earth, they eventually extracted the particles and sealed them in a lab for study. But then a Russian spy working under Brenner swiped the containment unit and tried to smuggle the particles to the USSR. He didn't make it far. 2 days later, his body was discovered beside that same Nevada cave system, the one we just saw in Henry's memory. And when Brenner's team investigated, the container was empty. The particles were gone. But they did find one clue: Henry Creel's Captain Midnight spyglass. This little toy was something Henry adored. He and Patty bonded over the comics it came from. Finding that spyglass beside the dead Russian led Brenner to Virginia Creel, Henry's mother. She told Brenner that Henry had gone missing for about 12 hours around the same time the Russian escaped. They eventually found Henry near the caves, confused and with no memory of what happened. Brenner put the pieces together. Henry, being a curious kid, likely found the stolen container and opened it, letting the mind flayer particles inside him. In the stage play, because Henry can't remember any of this, Brenner tries to force him past the mental block. He uses the recovered spyglass to provoke the memory and puts Henry under a brain monitoring device that lets the lab watch what Henry sees. Exactly like the machine he uses on 11 in Project Nina. Through that device, we learn that Henry was transported to Dimension X that day. Brenner calls the particles exotic materials, implying they were mind flayer particles. When Henry opened the container, they invaded him and pulled him into another dimension. When he reappeared, the particles stayed inside him, the same type that had infected Brenner's father. Not long after, still in Nevada, Henry slaughtered a boy's dog, most likely a bully. The next day, the kid confronted Henry at school, shoved him to the ground, and told him he saw the whole thing. Henry reached out in panic and burst the boy's eyeballs. At least, that's how it plays out in the Broadway version. In the original London performance, he breaks the kid's arm, maybe his leg, enough to put him in a wheelchair. That's what pushes the Creel family to move to Hawkins for a fresh start. But none of that matters, because Henry brought the shadow with him. This cavern memory is the moment Henry was first infected by the mind flayer. It's every bit as traumatic for him as the possession was for Will. And, just like 11 in Season 4, who had a suppressed memory that temporarily blocked her powers, Henry has buried this memory so deeply that his own mind won't let him access it. He literally cannot chase Max into this cave, even if he wanted to. Before he can invade her sanctuary, he'll have to do what Brenner forced him to do in the play. Confront the moment everything began. Max figuring this out and using the cavern as her safe haven is brilliant. It's why she hasn't had to keep running from Vecna through every corner of his mind for the last year and a half. But because Season 5 highlights this moment so clearly, the show will absolutely need to dive deeper into this memory in Volume 2. It's too significant. It's the only place Henry can't reach. And the Duffers hinted that they've been saving an even bigger twist, something they purposely didn't put in the stage play so they could unveil it in the show instead. And honestly, the only thing that makes sense is this: Henry Creel might not be entirely gone. While watching Volume 1, I kept getting the feeling that they might be setting up the Mind Flayer as the true puppet master, manipulating Vecna rather than the other way around. The first shadow basically confirms that the Mind Flayer is letting Vecna use its powers as a distraction, so it can continue nesting inside Henry's mind and using him as a host. This cavern could be the moment Henry Creel, the actual boy, effectively died, spiritually speaking. The moment the Mind Flayer began hollowing him out. Originally, Henry still had control. In the stage play, he even manages to resist the Mind Flayer and save Patty Newby, the girl he likes. He rescues her father when the Mind Flayer tries to kill him. But by the end of the play, Henry is losing ground. The Mind Flayer is growing stronger, and once Henry eventually becomes trapped in Dimension X, the creature continues molding him into something else. When we see him wounded in Season 4, you can still spot pieces of Henry. One of his arms even looks human. And in Season 1, when the monster takes over Will, we can tell the host body still has remnants of humanity. But fast forward 18 months, he's rebuilt himself in Dimension X, and every time he reforms, he sheds a little more humanity. Vecna 2.0, the Season 5 version, looks almost entirely consumed by evil, Like the Mind Flayer has squeezed out the last remaining slivers of Henry Creel. The Duffers have openly compared Vecna to Darth Vader. And if you know that story, Vader only turns back to the light because of his son, because love cuts through the darkness. Right now, Vecna doesn't have anyone like that, unless Patty Newby returns. They've been hinting at her for a while, and one of the actors from the play even teased her importance. Patty is the one person Henry ever truly cared about, and since she's still alive, she could easily appear in Season 5. I wouldn't be surprised if she becomes the emotional key, the person who awakens whatever tiny spark of Henry remains. Her presence, or even the memory of her, could overpower the fear the Mind Flayer has been using to dominate him. And honestly, seeing Henry break free of the Mind Flayer, even for a split second, would be insane. Imagine him sacrificing himself in a final moment, turning on the Mind Flayer to save Patty or Eleven or Will, just like Vader turning on the Emperor. It would mirror Billy's redemption in Season 3, but even bigger. It's just a theory, but Volume 2 is absolutely going to expand on all of this. So, go watch the full play breakdown, and I'm diving into those other videos I've been teasing, so keep an eye out. Let me know what you think about Henry's trauma tied to this cave memory, and I'll see you down in the comments.